A president sitting in a palace, security guards, flags, he's sure his power is eternal. And then in a single night, he simply disappears. Captured, handcuffed, taken to the United States. It happened in Venezuela. Nicolás Maduro, the man who was Iran's anchor in America's backyard. And when that happens there in Latin America, in Tehran, they start to understand something very simple. If America can do this to Maduro, no dictator is truly immune. And at the same time, in the streets of Iran, something else is happening. The people are coming out, not in a single city, not in one neighborhood. According to the reports you're seeing online and in the media, dozens of hotspots, dozens of cities, days in a row. People who until recently just wanted to work, to get home, to survive, are now shouting out loud, "Death to the dictator." The security forces look exhausted. The Basij becomes a target, and there's a blood price. Reports of killed and wounded, live fire, arrests, and the regime? Khamenei is no longer talking about protest. He calls them rioters and signals a heavy hand. And then comes the moment that shakes everyone. Trump, according to the quotes circulating, makes an unusual threat. If they keep shooting protesters, the US will intervene. After Venezuela, that sentence sounds completely different. The question is, are we seeing the beginning of a real revolution or yet another wave that will break against the wall of fear? And what happens when a regime fighting for its life realizes it's losing control at home and abroad at the same time? Hey, I'm Mati Shoshani, and this is Boots on the Ground, Explainer. Tonight we're going inside, into Iran, where the unrest is burning, why right now, how Venezuela enters the picture, and what it does to the regime, the economy, the proxies, and why in Israel and the US, they're watching this like a turning point. So let's make sense of it all, because when we say a revolution in Iran, most people in the world immediately jump to one question. Is this really a moment of collapse or just another round where the regime survives? And the real answer is, we don't really know, but we can identify something new, something that doesn't feel like another protest. But let's crack, a crack in fear, because look at what happens here in the last week. Iran is burning from within. And then the news from Venezuela hits. President Maduro disappears overnight into American custody. Unbelievable. And suddenly in Tehran, the most dangerous thing for dictators happens. The street starts thinking, if it happened to him, why couldn't it happen to them? When Iran shakes, the entire Middle East feels it. And the world too. And the first thing to understand, this protest didn't start yesterday. And it didn't start only because of a slogan or one specific event. For years, Iran has been trying to break free from the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. This protest sits on three layers that were built over years, and now they're exploding together. The first layer is life itself. Iran invested more in trying to destroy Israel than its own citizens. People in Iran are sick of insane cost of living, a currency that keeps eroding and it's worth almost nothing, collapsing infrastructure, and a feeling that you can't breathe anymore. And Iranians, especially the middle class, understand the unwritten deal that the regime has broken. We'll stay quiet and you'll make sure there's at least a minimum quality of life. But when there's no minimum, people have nothing left to lose. The second layer is fear-breaking. Slowly, city after city, group after group that used to be quiet, students, merchants, workers, even ordinary people, realize the regime may look strong, but after Trump and Netanyahu, it's not unbreakable. And when fear cracks, that's a psychological shift. The public understand it's stronger than the government. Now the third layer is what's happening outside. And this time it's critical, because for years Iran has been used for playing one game. When there's internal pressure, it lights a fire outside of the country. When the people are frustrated, It redirects attention to the so-called enemy, to hatred, to confrontation, to proxies, to missiles, to threats, and in short, who does Iran hate more than us? But now, after what happened in this last year, after the 12-day war in which Iran was humiliated, after blows, after sanctions, the question remains, does it still have enough power to ignite the region in order to extinguish the home front? That's exactly where we enter with a wide lens of this episode. We're here to tell you the full truth about what's happening in Iran. We want to answer the big question. Is this the moment Iran starts cracking from within, or the moment it becomes more dangerous from the outside? Because both can be true at the same time exactly. A regime can be weak at home and still choose to be 10 times more brutal. A regime can feel it's losing control and try to buy time with blood. And it can also try to prove to the world, I'm still here, through actions outside Iran's borders. And tonight, we'll also look at what Israel and the US are looking for right now, how they're preparing, and what the concern is. And finally, we'll talk about what's hot, Venezuela, because it shows Iranians and the regime what can happen when America decides to take action. And the true question is, does that give momentum to the protest? Does it push Tehran to become even more extreme? Now, before we dive into the details, I want you to remember one thing, one sentence that will follow us throughout the episode. When regimes feel they're wobbling, they always choose between two paths, reform or fear. And this year, they broke a record in executions. In Iran, traditionally, the answer has been fear. The question is whether this time it still will work for them. So let's go into an inside look into Iran, what's really happening there, what it looks like on the street, and what people living inside it are saying. Before we continue any further, if you want us to keep bringing you these reports as they are with no filters and no games, hit like, subscribe to this channel, press subscribe, share, and keep helping us tell the truth. So let's get started. Iran is burning from within. The cost of living protest turns into a bloody confrontation, and the regime shifts into an emergency mode after a year in which Tehran absorbed hard blows outside its borders. And after what was perceived on Iran street as a strategic humiliation against Israel and the United States, the pressure comes back home. Not through speeches, not through threats, but through the checkout line in the supermarket, the dollar exchange rate, and the fact that citizens simply can't maintain a basic quality of life. Within a few days, the cost of living protests that began as a local economy store in Tehran's bazaar spread to other cities, gained reinforcement from students and professional unions, and turned into a violent confrontation with deaths, arrests, and the regime moving into a decisive response posture. The immediate trigger was the rial collapsing to a historic low. That's the local currency within Iran. According to reports in international media and agencies, the dollar rate jumped to extreme levels. If in 2015, a dollar was around 32,000 rials, now we're talking about more than 1 million rials per US dollar, with a dramatic jump compared to recent years. The meaning on the street is simple. Purchasing power has been erased. Basic goods prices are soaring, and the public mostly hears general promises. The protests first erupted among merchants and shop owners in the capital, as the currency-sensitive sectors like electronics and mobile phones closed their doors in protest. Within a short amount of time, students joined in, and the protests moved beyond the bazaar into squares and campuses. What distinguishes this round is the pace and the spread. According to various reports, these are consecutive days of hotspots in multiple cities, and a protest that, in public memory, resembles the biggest protest wave of the last decade, including 2019 over fuel prices and 2022 after the protests that erupted following the death of Masha Amini. Even if we are not yet at the scale of hundreds of cities like in 2019, and even if there are signs of a brief calm in Tehran due to the closure measures and administrative steps, the very fact that events are expanding and the different layers of society that are joining creates pressure the regime cannot afford to ignore. On the ground, the clash with security forces is already exceeding and exacting a substantial cost. In events in the city of Fasa in Fars province in the south of the country, a first fatality was reported. An 18-year-old Mehdi Samavti, I hope I said his name right, who was killed in clashes around the local government's building. Some reports present this as live fire of protesters. The regime, on the other hand, tried to deny or blur it. In the same area, there were also reports of an attack on a provincial government building. At the same time, additional reports emerged of shooting towards protesters in other provinces as well, and of flare-ups around civilians and university centers. One of the dramatic symbols of escalation came from footage in which protesters are seen setting a Basij headquarters on fire, the popular force that is often used as a representation arm or repression arm on the ground. The regime responded on two levels. First, economic symbolic, and legal security on the economic side. President Masoud Pezeshkian convened a meeting with heads of professional unions and representatives of chambers of commerce and promised that the government would act by all possible means to deal with the difficulties. But behind the calming message came a sharp one. The business sector is required to cooperate, influence what happened on the ground, and calm the street, meaning become part of the mechanism restraining the protest. In parallel, the regime made leadership changes at the top of the central bank and appointed a new governor, hoping to stop the currency's deterioration and project control. Now, on the security side, the language hardened. The Attorney General issued a warning that non-violent protests around livelihood can be understood, but any attempt to turn events into harm to security, destruction of property, or the implementation of plans written outside the country, talking about foreign influence here, will be met with a decisive legal response. This is Tehran's standard formula. Every protest quickly gets framed as a foreign hand or subversion to justify arrests and repression. Now, in recent days, administrative steps were also seen that were presented as linked to a cold wave in electricity conservation, closing schools, banks, and public institutions in areas of Tehran, shifting universities to remote learning, and reducing activity. In practice, these steps reduce street movement, reduce gatherings, and make it harder to the protesters or to protests operate continuously. Into an economic story also enters the political regional direction, exactly where Israel becomes relevant once more. In Iran streets, chants were heard aimed against sending resources outward, with messages in the style of neither Gaza nor Lebanon, meaning a demand that the regime stops investing money and attention in external areas and proxies and return the budget to life inside of Iran. This connects directly to what happened in the last year. The more the regime is perceived as spending a fortune on regional struggles while citizens collapse, the more the protests gain depth. For Tehran, this is an especially dangerous point because it hits the heart of its regional project, the internal justification for resistance beyond their borders. And here, the international dimension enters too. After statements by President Trump that the US might intervene if nonviolent protesters are killed, the regime shifted up a gear. Iranian police announced they would not allow foreign intervention, and messages for security and policy figures in Tehran described alertness and warned of regional chaos if there were American actions. In parallel, Iran condemned the American operation in Venezuela as a violation of sovereignty, an attempt to create one line connecting what they did to Maduro with what they're trying to do to us in Iran, and to convince the public that the protest is part of an external move. Inside Iran, according to analytical reports, the regime is also activating familiar control systems. Basij operatives infiltrating civilian crowds to identify leaders, targeted arrests and disappearances of detainees, and tightened control over the media and the ability to report from the field. Accounts coming from outside paint a picture of citizens who feel they have no address in the face of a heavy hand. And alongside that, a broader group than before that refuses to go home quietly. At this stage, the protest trajectory is clear: an economic start, social expansion, and security escalation. The regime is trying to buy time through closures, replacing senior officials and judicial deterrence, but against a dynamic of a collapsing currency and runaway costs of living that is band-aid of an open fracture. From here, we move to the next layer of the story, how Tehran connects the protests at home to threats from outside, and what that means for Israel, for the region, and for the way Iran will choose to regain control when the street refuses to calm down. But 1 second before we continue, I want you to keep spreading the truth. Share our content with as many people as possible. Click the subscribe button so you stay tuned to the truth in real time and never miss boots on the ground. For many Israelis, it's still about balancing reserve duty, work, and family. You come home, take off the uniform, and life doesn't slow down. I know that feeling. I've come back from reserves trying to be present at home, catch up at work, and still feeling completely drained. So as this new year begins, I made a decision, a New Year's resolution, not to do more, but to take better care of my health so I can actually show up for the people who depend on me. And that's a decision any of us can make going into the new year. That's why I started using Vinia. It's an Israeli supplement made from red grape cells that helps support healthy blood flow to the heart, to the brain, and muscles. Now for me, that meant better focus, steadier energy, and fewer days of feeling foggy or burned out. I started using Vinia during reserve duty, and I'm still taking it today. If you're thinking about a New Year's resolution you can actually keep, taking care of your health is a good place to start. You can learn more at TBNisrael.com or call 800-638-1944. Faith helps me stay grounded, and Vinia helps me keep up. After a year in which Iran absorbed hard blows in the direct confrontation with Israel back in June, in continued American pressure, and in the regime's crumbling sense of security at home, Tehran enters 2026 doing two things at the same time. On the one hand, defending against a slide into internal loss of control. On the other, rebuilding the ability to make an external move to prove it is still here. Now, in recent days, according to a report in Axios, Prime Minister Netanyahu and the US President Donald Trump discussed not only continued pressure on Iran, but also the possibility of a second round of strikes if Tehran returns to patterns of provocation. The report noted that the talks also addressed Iran's missile program and signs that Hezbollah is trying to rebuild capabilities after the strikes and the ongoing damage that they suffered. The message from Washington and Jerusalem is clear. If Iran tries to refill stockpiles, accelerate production, or return its regional network to full speed, it will face a system far tougher than it knew in the past. And that will not only be through strikes, but also through targeted financial strangulation. The money that feeds the system, oil, sanctions, evasion, and proxy financing, one of the most important engines that allows Iran to keep funding proxies and rebuilding arrays, is money coming through oil routes that bypass sanctions. At the end of 2025, the US Treasury Department announced sanctions against entities in China and Iran that it claimed were involved in purchasing Iranian oil and laundering revenue that helped Tehran's economic system bypass international pressure. This is part of the effort to close cash faucets that allow Iran to breathe and fund regional activity. In parallel, the US is applying pressure on smuggling corridors identified with the Yemeni arena. Reuters reported American sanctions against a network intended, according to the US, to help the Houthis generate revenue from selling oil and related products, which connects directly to their ability to sustain an ongoing campaign against maritime trade routes. The meaning is, even when Iran tries to play fire outside to divert attention from the home front, it's now being forced to pay a higher price for the very ability to finance that fire. Now let's talk about the missiles. Quantity is no longer enough, and precision becomes a strategic threat inside Israel. There's a special sensitivity now to two parallel lines: progress in missile projects and upgrades to high-quality strike capabilities, the kind that can paralyze infrastructure, not only create noise. There are also reports in Israeli media about concerns regarding combining non-conventional capabilities into the missile envelope. But what is strongly supported in the pattern is this: Israel and the West view the missile program as a component that advances even under pressure, and therefore monitoring and action against it do not and cannot stop. Now let's talk about the central proxy. Hezbollah is trying to recover, and Israel strikes the heart of that project. And here we return to the core northern threat. Now, according to Reuters, reports from the last year, Israel has repeatedly struck targets connected to Hezbollah's production and storage of precision capabilities in Lebanon, precisely based on the understanding that one precise missile hitting a vital facility can create an effect equal to dozens of unguided rockets. This also connects to the accumulated reports in Israeli media about a shift in Hezbollah's approach, moving from reliance on quantity to a focus on more precise means, including short and medium-range capabilities based on missile families familiar in the region. And in all of this, Iran is trying to do what it always does, not appear on the front line, but hold the strings from behind. So what's next? If Iran is pushed into a corner, it may look for a stage farther away. When the regime in Tehran feels it's being economically strangled, its smuggling corridors are being blocked, and it is not allowed to rebuild proxies at the pace it wants to, it looks for operation space that creates an advantage, psychological, political, or possibly operational. And this is exactly where the Africa, Red Sea arena and the Somaliland story enter the picture. According to an ABC News report, Israel announced recognition of Somaliland as an independent state, a step that echoes far beyond the Horn of Africa, both because of the regional meaning and because of the competition over sea lanes and trade. And from here, we move to Venezuela, why it was a strategic asset for the Iranian axis, and what it means when the game there changes. But 1 second before, we're working hard to bring you the full truth, so help us spread the truth by clicking and sharing this with as many people as possible. Let's continue with what happened in Venezuela. The night the United States launched an operation in Venezuela was written like a war movie, but with real-world consequences. In Caracas, the lights went out, communication systems malfunctioned, and then above the city, the sound of helicopters, pinpoint strikes, and special forces slipping into Nicolas Maduro's most guarded facility. According to reports published in the US, this was not a moment decision. It was an operation built over months, tight intelligence collection on the president's routine, an internal source that confirmed the location in real time, a cyber attack that disabled layers of defense, and coordinated air deployment from a large number of bases. Within hours, a dictator who was untouchable disappeared from the screen and was found on the way to trial in the United States. And in that moment, Tehran understood the rules are changing, because when a dictator can disappear in a single night in America's backyard, the message doesn't stay in South America. It crosses ocean. It goes straight to Ali Khamenei, exactly as protests in Iran expand over economic collapse and cost of living, with reports of death and clashes. And here the diplomatic picture enters. Trump and Netanyahu met just before this operation and issued a statement against Tehran and Iran, and the most sensitive time, as Washington signals that patience is over and anyone who breaks regional order and threatens American interests will feel the price. This discussion is not only against Iran, but as part of a broader plan of an American axis positioning itself against 3 fronts at the same time: China, Russia, and Iran. This is exactly the spirit of the Monroe Doctrine. In professional jargon, the United States is sending a clear message. You don't drive stakes into our hemisphere, and you don't build enemy infrastructure here in our backyard. So why is Venezuela even connected to Iran and to Hezbollah? Because for years, it was a pipeline. Money, gold, oil, passports, smuggling routes, and deep ties. In the US, the Latin arena was previously described as a space where Hezbollah operates economic and criminal networks that pump oxygen into the organization. And the fall of a friendly regime there is not only a political move, it's an infrastructure blow to the financial pipeline. But Iran doesn't stay without a response. When it is pressed at home, it strengthens itself outside. In Lebanon, we see a clear pattern. Hezbollah is trying to move from quantity to quality. Fewer launches, more precision. This includes rebuilding guided weapon systems, attempts to upgrade existing rockets using navigation and guidance systems, and discourse around missile families like Fatah 110, M600 against that. Israel continues to act. Strikes, thwarted plots, damage to training and infrastructure, but the challenge is not only military. The Lebanese government is weak, and the story becomes a rebuilding race. And from here, Iran is trying to stitch back together all the loose ends. In Lebanon through Hezbollah, in the Red Sea through the Houthis threatening trade routes, and in Africa through the Horn of Africa and the stories around Somaliland, ports, sea corridors, and who stands where the regional power map shifts. Not all the threads are visible yet, but the direction is clear. Iran is looking for depth, routes, and alternatives, while Americans and Israelis are showing that deterrence has become action. So the question hovering over everything is this. If a dictator can disappear in a single night in Caracas, is the next domino really in Tehran, or will Iran, to survive, try to ignite a last front through Lebanon, the Red Sea, or the Horn of Africa? Exactly there, in the Somaliland story, where we tie all of the threads together. Will this end in another strike in Iran? What does the near future hold for us? Only God will be able to reveal to us in the near future. In the meantime, we'll be here to report on every development, and most importantly, don't forget to keep spreading the truth and pray for the people of Israel. Pray for the IDF soldiers, wherever they are, in the air, at sea, and on land. Pray for the peace of the people of Israel, and most importantly, don't forget to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Hello, this is Mati here in Jerusalem with TBN Israel.
This is Yair Pinto from TBN Israel here in Jerusalem. TBN Israel is keeping viewers informed with Israel-focused news, culture, and what God is doing in this land.
Support TBN Israel today online at tbn.org/Israel.